I'm going to call the October 17th, 2022 Mojave County Board of Supervisors meeting to order. Please stand for an invocation by Pastor Tony, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you for this morning. We thank you for your presence here with us. We thank you for this great country that we live in, and we thank you for this beautiful county. Father, I thank you for each supervisor and all the other staff that have given their time and their expertise to help govern our communities in which our families live and work and play. Father, I ask your blessing over all of the matters that are going to be discussed this morning. Help them to have your heart. Father, give them wisdom and discernment. Guide and protect them as they make decisions that impact Mojave County. Father, may their decisions and their discussions not only bring you glory, but also be beneficial to those who live in our communities. Father, I ask you to be with those who are hurting and struggling and experiencing difficulties right now. Father, you know their individual needs. Help them to find direction and help, and may our communities be a source of hope for each one of them. Father, we ask you to be with all of our first responders and our healthcare workers, our police and our firemen. Keep them safe and healthy as they work faithfully to keep us healthy and safe. Father, be in each one of our schools. Be with all the teachers and the students. Be with our local businesses and their owners and employees, and help them to continue to grow and to be prosperous. Father, be with all of those who work in our communities as they reach out and do their jobs and help keep us prosperous. Father, we thank you for all the things that you do. Help us to come together and to support one another. Father, it is all these things that we pray in your loving name. Amen. Thank you, Father.
Thank you, Pastor. And pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Board of Supervisors may by motion recess into executive session to receive legal advice from the board's attorneys on any item contained in this agenda pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A3, 4, and 7. Motion and action to call for an executive session to be held on November 7th, 2022 at 9 a.m. for discussion and consultation with legal counsel in accordance with ARS 38-431.03A3, 4, and 7 to discuss the items noticed on the agenda with Astor.
So made.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it, so ordered. Official business before the board. Mr. Attorney, any contemplated litigation claims or demands?
No, Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Committee or legislative report, Supervisor Bishop.
Thank you, Chairman Gold. This last week, as president of the CSA this year, I want to thank Pima County and Santa Cruz County for hosting our CSA Policy Summit in Tucson. I want to thank this entire board who was able to join us there either in person or by proxy. The CSA, what they do is they set budget priorities, try to eliminate the mandated payments to ADJC, and continue financial flexibility, address probation funding without mandating increased cost on counties. So 15 counties submitted proposals, which resulted in 9 action items for CSA. Unfortunately, one of the items that Mojave County submitted did not get the required votes for approval, and that's very disappointing. But county supervisors also adopted the policy agenda for the 2022 legislative session, of which water will be one of the top priorities there. We'll seek strong partnership with state leaders to promote good policy, better government, and improved constituent services. We'll urge legislature to enact sustainable funding for road building and maintenance and maximize the investment for the bipartisan infrastructure plan. We'll call on lawmakers to support federal, state, tribal, and local efforts to increase investment in broadband infrastructure. And we'll request lawmakers reject calls for pension system benefit enhancements without clear, measurable benefits for the taxpaying public. Those are just a few things that CSA will be active with this coming year, and other items as they show themselves and come forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Angus.
Thank you. I too was at that summit down there in Tucson, and again was disappointed that the body did not adopt. It was a resolution. It wasn't a policy issue that we were asking them to go. It was just a resolution. Hope that they will revisit it again, so we'll be working on that. Last week I went to the Freeze 2022 Summit, which is the free roaming equid and the ecosystem, just a fancy name for the Wild Horse and Burro Summit. And I go there just to see how far we've come in changing policy. It's slow going, and I go there to represent the boroughs because most of it really is about wild horses. The wild burro issue is really just in a couple of states, Arizona being the biggest, and then Nevada, and I think Utah has a little. They're roaming, they're free roaming up there, and it's kind of amazing how little light they put on the boroughs. So I try to explain what the problem is here, and there's really not like wild horses, and so it's just an issue that we got to keep pounding on. I did find out that BLM is going to be doing a gather in the Black Mountains. I think they're taking between 700 and 800 this time. So they have been trying to do something to alleviate our problem. However, until we take care of the underlying issue, which is that there's just too many, it's overpopulated, it's just plugging up holes. We need to make the decision to do what's right, and that is lower the herd one time and then do all the things they talk about, which is, birth control, darting, things that cost tens, hundreds of millions of dollars. I think BLM projects that in the next 10 years, it'll be like a $5 billion, and it's not necessary. So if anybody wants to find out more about this issue, please contact me. We do have a representative on the National Wild Horse and Burro Committee, and I think that also, she sees exactly what I saw at this summit, which was just, a negative response to doing what we believe is the right thing to do. So we'll just keep working on that. Thank you.
Supervisor Johnson.
Nothing this morning, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you, Chairman. Regarding the resolution, I also went down to the CSA Summit. Was glad to be a part of that. The resolution that Mojave County was a part of, so it was the only item that was offered by the counties that had 4 counties behind it. It was Mojave County, Coconino County, Yavapai County, and La Paz County. And it was a resolution asking that CSA adopt this resolution in support of new common sense rural groundwater policy and advocating for that at the state legislature. That did not pass. So thankfully, we still have that very strong coalition between 4 counties. We're going to work with our legislators to try to push things forward this next legislative session as far as getting something done, and we're also going to keep educating and keep advocating with the media and in other outlets. But something does need to happen. Sticking your head in the sand and keeping it there isn't a really sustainable way forward in a drought. So the other thing I'd like to mention more close to home here in the Kingman area is the Arizona Department of Water Resources is going to be holding a public hearing, an official public hearing to present data on the possible designation of a new irrigation non-expansion area over the Wallapai Valley groundwater basin. What that would do, it would grandfather in current irrigated acres. It would limit future new irrigated acres out of the Wallapai Valley groundwater basin. From the county's staff and the city's staff, we believe that the corporate agriculture that has moved in from California and overseas, they are currently irrigating about 8,400 acres, but they collectively own almost 78,000 acres. So you can see the scale of that if they were allowed to continue to grow and to irrigate a majority of those acres. It's just not sustainable out of our Wallapai Valley groundwater basin. So ADWR held one previous meeting, and at that meeting they presented some slides. Those slides indicated that the outflow from the basin in 2022, they modeled 45,000 acre feet a year coming out of the basin. Inflow and recharge, they modeled at 12,000 acre feet a year going back into the basin. So you can see how much more water is coming out of the Wallapai Basin right now than is going back in. And for those that don't know how much water that really is, 1 acre foot of water is 326,000 gallons of groundwater. So when you're talking about 45,000 acre feet of groundwater being pumped out, that's billions of gallons of groundwater every single year. So that meeting is going to be held here in the Mojave County Administration Building on Saturday, currently Saturday, November 12th, 2022, from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. There has been a little bit of a thought that that meeting date may shift a little bit, and if that does, we'll certainly make sure that everybody knows that that occurs, but right now it's scheduled for Saturday, November 12th. And additional information is available on ADWR's website. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. I'll just give you a quick update on the Gould burros. Molly and Bailey, they're enjoying their no longer free-ranging life, being fed every day, but they do not like my wife's new mare. The new mare is kind of nasty to them, but that's a Gould burro update. Moving right along, County Manager report.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and board members. No report today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Approval of the September 19th, 2022 BOS meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. Call to the public. Pursuant to ARS 38-431.01H, a public body may make an open call to the public during a public meeting subject to reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions to allow individuals to address the public body on any issue within the jurisdiction of the public body. At the conclusion of the open call to the public, individual members of the public body may respond to criticism made by those who have addressed the public body, may ask staff to review a matter, may ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. However, the members of the public body shall not discuss or take action on matters raised during an open call to the public unless the matters are properly noticed for discussion and legal action. Wayne Hollins. Paul
Wayne
Rice
Hollins,
is on deck.
Golden Valley. Thank you for having the opportunity to speak here. I was going to talk about something else, but I'll talk about water again this time. We're talking about the farmers and ranchers having 78,000 acres that they could plant if they chose to do that. That's a little over 120 square miles. There's over 13,000 square miles in Mojave County. And we're talking about 30,000 acre feet deficit in the Wallapais. 5 acres of rain in the county is almost 3.6 million acre feet. So if it doesn't all fall up there, the rest of the county is relatively close to the Wallapai Basin. Instead of paying companies $1 billion to bring in water from outside of the state while we ignore the rain that hits us on the head. The way to increase the water that falls is to put living plants in the ground, increasing the organic matter. If you increase the organic matter 1%, it will hold, that acre will hold 25,000 more gallons of water that won't be running down the road, wiping out our roads and washes. So the thing is not to, I mean, you go out to the orchards and stuff, you'll see acres and acres of bare dirt. Bare dirt is just that. How many cattle can you feed on bare dirt? How much vegetables can you grow on bare dirt? You got to plant something in the ground. You plant trees in the ground, but that only takes up a small space. You got all that other land they could be putting living plants in the ground that would increase the ability to infiltrate the water. And now we want to limit them to do that. That don't make sense to me. You know, I always thought that Mojave County could be set the example for many things happening in the state. I mean, we have relatively few people, so it's not like doing a big herd of cats, you know. We have 13,000 acres of resources. Obviously, not all is controlled by individuals or the county. A lot of it's the federal government. We can work together, though, if we really wanted to do something. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Paul Rice and Chris Rodarty's on deck.
Good morning. My name is Paul Rice. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona, Maricopa County. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. So I drove up here from Phoenix this morning, and I'll be leaving here shortly, going back. The reason for my visit today is twofold. First, I wanted to deliver the packets that the clerk has given you, but I also wanted to discuss something of concern right now with the election coming up, and that has to do with the use of the electronic voting machines. I've been working with a small group of citizens in Pinal and Maricopa County for the past 2 years. This group has been working to become very knowledgeable about the law, and this is not about fraud, and it's not about party affiliation, but the fact of the matter is the Arizona revised statutes clearly state that the machines need to be certified by an accredited lab. And that accredited lab certificate is not valid. So the machines to be used in this upcoming election are not properly certified. So if I could just read the statute here, this is ARS 16442B. Machines or devices used at any election for federal, state, or county offices may only be certified for use in the state and may only be used in the state if they comply with the Help America Vote Act of 2002. And if those machines or devices have been tested and approved by a laboratory that is accredited pursuant to the Help America Vote Act of 2002. It's not the responsibility of the county to certify those machines necessarily or to accredit the lab. It is the responsibility of the Secretary of State to make sure that the Election Assistance Commission has properly accredited the lab, which is SLI compliance for the ES&S machines that you use, and the Secretary of State has not done that. The certificates that have been issued are invalid because they're not signed by the right person. They also only last 2 years, and those the ES&S machines that are to be certified by SLI compliance should not be used for the upcoming election. And my purpose in addressing you here is to let you know that if they are used, it will be in violation of the law. So what we're asking for is a hand count. You should have a contingency plan in place right now, which I'll be putting a public records request in for in the next day or two, that clearly allows for the hand count in the event of a failure of the infrastructure for the machines. I don't have time to go over everything that's in your packet, but this is all explained through the documentation that I've given you. You also received a letter probably from Jim O'Connor, Corporation Commissioner, regarding this issue, and it was his desire that you would take a look at this and that the counties would take ownership of this, because really that power resides with you, not to use the machines. Thank you very much.
Chris Rodardi.
Chris Rodardi, Mojave County taxpayer. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. When a wicked man rules, the people groan. Proverbs 29:2. In 2022, the people are indeed groaning. Today, as we experience our liberties being annihilated, our lives being destroyed in the womb, and our pursuits of happiness abolished, we reminisce fondly for the days when we, the people, were in charge. Now, in stark contrast to our founding documents, which proclaimed a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, we have become a government of the authorities, by the agencies, and for the globalist elites. We live under a dysfunctional, top-down, evil regime wherein the people are silenced as hungry power despots rule. To illustrate my point, following is a quote from Biden's proud declarations in his Executive Order 13985. Equal opportunity is the bedrock of American democracy, and our diversity is one of our country's greatest strengths. But for too many, the American dream remains out of reach. Entrenched disparities in our laws and public policies and in our public and private institutions have often denied that equal opportunity to individuals and communities. Our country faces converging economic, health, and climate crises that have exposed and exacerbated inequities, while a historic movement for justice has highlighted the unbearable human costs of systemic racism. Our nation deserves an ambitious whole-of-government equity agenda that matches the scale of the opportunities and challenges that we face. It is therefore the policy of my administration that the federal government should pursue a comprehensive approach to advancing equity for all, including people of color and others who have been historically underserved, marginalized, and adversely affected by persistent poverty and inequality. Affirmatively advancing equity, civil rights, racial justice, and equal opportunity is the responsibility of the whole of our government. Because advancing equity requires a systemic approach to embedding fairness in decision-making processes, executive departments and agencies must recognize and work to redress inequities in their policies and programs that serve as barriers to equal opportunity. You may say this Biden speak doesn't apply to Mojave County. Respectfully, I submit you are wrong. And with every penny of federal money you accept, you surrender, we the people, to the whims of tyrants. Repent now that your people may at long last rejoice. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Consent agenda. The following items listed under the consent agenda will be considered as a group and acted upon by one motion with no separate discussion of said items unless a board member so requests. In that event, the item will be removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion and action. Supervisor Bishop, anything to remove today?
25.
25. Supervisor Angus.
10.
Supervisor Johnson.
30.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Nothing this morning, Mr. Chairman.
I had one here. And I'm going to pull 29.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to approve the consent minus 10, 25, 29, and 30.
Second.
You've heard that motion in second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. Number 10, Supervisor Angus.
Thank you. So here's another program to address homelessness. I think this is, how many, can I call?
Sure.
Would you please go? How many programs do we have that we get funded for to address homelessness?
Chairman Gould, Supervisor Angus, there's more than a handful that we have in the Community Services Department. Currently, across the board, we have 552 people within the county.
Okay, and so here's another one, and I did a little bit of research. It's confusing because they're all meant to be confusing, and it was this what is it? McKinney-Vento was originally supposed to be for children, I believe, and now it's opened up again. And so I've a few questions. First of all, we're giving these vouchers for homelessness, but I thought we had no housing. So where are these people going? So we're going to be giving more vouchers, but we have a housing shortage. So how does that work?
Chairman Gould, Supervisor Angus. In regards to our housing vouchers, we are making progress within the Community Services Department as through economic development for developments to come to Mojave County. There are some local business folks who have bought hotels and converted those, which then will allow for an opportunity for vouchers. With that being said, our average time for lease up is somewhere between 90 and 120 days.
Okay. So again, I'm going to ask, how many programs do we have?
Supervisor Angus, we have, I can go through and I probably have to get back with the exact numbers.
Okay, and we asked in the past, how do we measure success? So we just give these vouchers and the people go 30, 60, 90, 120 days, like you say. How do we know that there is success in that and that this is not going to be a vicious cycle where people are coming to the government yet again? I'm just, I'm overwhelmed by these. Ever since COVID, it seems every week there's like another program, and at some point we have to say enough. And I do think that there are places for that. And again, I've said this since day one. It is in the nonprofit part of our society. Why is government involved in this? If we would get these vouchers, and I know that the nonprofits come to you, my issue is now people are getting very, very comfortable with coming to the government for all their basic needs, when in the past they go to their faith-based organizations and their nonprofit organizations, and we have replaced that. And I have a big issue with that. So I'm not going to support this.
Chairman Gould, Supervisor Angus. You make some valid points, definitely. And I want to kind of circle back and make sure that I give a full disclosure and that you see the product or the opportunity in front of us. With that being said, in regards to working with the non-for-profits, we do that tremendously. We work with WestCare, we work with Cornerstone Mission, we work with a lot of different non-for-profits. They actually recently applied for a NOFA for a grant system like this for rapid rehousing. And then so you ask, how do we know that they're successful, or how do we know the programs are successful? We know that, and this is just speaking to the other co-chair of the Continuum of Care, was that her estimation was about 90% of the people that go through rapid rehousing actually have a better outcome, meaning that they're off rapid rehousing. And what I mean by that is the way that works through Cornerstone Mission, the rapid rehousing is they'll go to Cornerstone, they'll get them an apartment for 2 or 3 months, right? And then they have to be self-sufficient. And the way that works is they make a referral to Arizona at Work. So we then help make sure that they have the ability to attain a job and have upskills in regards to their ability to be employed and do that. And when you ask, before it's been asked, how long have people been on the program? So when you look at that, on average, about 6 years is the length of time that people stay with a voucher. That's the amount of time it takes them to be self-sufficient. With that being said as well, of those people that are on the program, 90% of them do pay something towards their own rent. So it's not just a handout.
Okay, so you have HUD, this money's coming from HUD. And then ultimately you say you work with the nonprofits. Why are we the middleman? Why does it have to be funneled through a government entity?
Chairman Gould, Supervisor Angus, when you think of this program specifically, it's going through the continuum of care. So they send the vouchers through the housing authority because they have the ability to manage the funds, make sure that they're compliant, make sure things are being done the way they should be done. With that being said, if you look at the COC, because that's how this grant will be run, through the continuum of care, so those are the access points, right? The housing authority is simply serving as that person with the voucher, with the funding that says, okay, we can do this. Simply stated, that's where it is. So there's 7 different access points within the county for the continuum of care that are not, they're nonprofits that people can enter the program through.
Okay. Thanks.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you, Chairman Gould. Director Smith, this is a federal grant. Are there any county general fund dollars that go into supporting this grant administratively?
So all of our funds, so outside of myself and several other people within the department, which is a small proportion, fund the overall department, right? But for this particular program, it's all grant-based funded. So it doesn't go towards it. So all of the things that I brought in front of you the past, I don't know, 3 months, all of those things are funded out of the funds that we receive. So no, it does not touch the general fund whatsoever.
That wasn't really my question. My question is staff time to administer these things, right? So you get this federal grant and then you have to have staff time, which is county funded, to support these things. Is that correct?
Yes, certainly.
No? Is that, or do they give you federal funds to administer as well?
Chairman Gould, Supervisor Lincoln-Felter, no, we are provided administration funds to provide those services to the county.
Oh, okay. I appreciate it. I think that I would agree with Supervisor Angus's point. You know, when you look at counties, there's 2 really broad categories of services that we have. We have the stuff that we're mandated to do, and then on the other side, we have a bunch of stuff that we're not mandated to do. And then, you know, those things that are not mandated to do, they grow. I mean, you look at the last program that we looked at, 50 housing vouchers, and now we have over 400 housing vouchers. And I think that when you have the non-mandated stuff that continues to grow, you start to have this competition between the stuff that's mandated to grow or to be there, to be a county function, and the things that we really don't have to do. That's why we have a sheriff's office that's still underfunded and needs deputies. That's why we have a court system that still has funding needs. Those are mandated things. And in my opinion, I think that we should fund all those mandated things first, and whatever's left, then we should fund the non-mandated stuff. But I agree that I can't really support this, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Supervisor Bishop.
Thank you, Chairman Gould. Michael, is your department overfunded?
Chairman Gould, Supervisor Bishop, I wouldn't say we're overfunded. I would say that we're providing the services of the county and that we've been directed to provide.
Okay, so this agenda item is to register for registration of interest is what they're calling us. So this is not accepting money. This is just saying that Mojave County is interested in this grant. And then you would apply for the grant at that point if we approve this. Is that correct?
Chairman Gould, Supervisor Bishop, that is correct. It's a simple letter of interest that says to the federal government that we would like to pursue the opportunity to see what allocation would come to Mojave County based upon the formula devised by HUD to actually provide these vouchers once that is determined. But currently today, this is not, we're not signing a contract. We're not doing anything outside of simply just saying we're interested in applying for vouchers.
Okay. Your department is almost fully funded by grants that you apply for and receive. Many of your employees are paid for by these grants. If we quit accepting grants, it's easy for us to sit up here behind the dais because we're all taking down a salary and we're not homeless and we're pretty comfortable, I think, all of us. But Are there still people out there that are hurting financially, causing them to live below the standard that's acceptable for most people?
Chairman Gould, Supervisor Bishop, currently right now, Mojave County has a poverty rate of over 16%. If you look at that, our total population in the county right now is 220. When you look at our services within the Community Services Department, our budgets annually, we're right around 15 million. The county support of that fund is just a little over 400,000 of general funds fund our program. Outside of that, it's over $15 million.
Okay, I'm not a big advocate of handouts and welfare and making it easy for people not to go to work. I think people, if they're able, they should go to work. They should support themselves and their families. But on the other hand, I have friends and family and acquaintances that I know that are living in deplorable conditions in a travel trailer or a mobile home that should have been condemned. There are people out there that are still struggling. I want them to go to work. I want them to be successful and be happy. And if these programs help them get to that place, I can't in good conscience say no to a hand up. I can say no to permanent welfare. I definitely don't want that, but I do appreciate a hand up. And I don't know how long that hand up should extend before we say, you know, you've had 6 months to get on your feet, you're out of here. So I think that's your job, community services job, to determine who's eligible and who's taking advantage of the system. And I hope that you are watching that sort of, not necessarily fraud, but maybe laziness. So I will support this because it goes not only to people that are homeless or on the verge of homelessness, but it goes to domestic violence, veterans, various different situations. So that's my thought. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor. Mr. Smith, you spoke earlier that, was that the average recipient stays on the program for 6 years?
Chairman Gould, that is correct.
So what happens in the 6th year? Are they then self-sufficient? Do we actually do any tracking?
Chairman Gould, we don't have the tracking on that of where they've gone after 6 years, but what they have done is they've exited the program, so they're no longer receiving services from the county Community Services Department.
So we don't know whether they're self-sufficient or whether they moved or whether they just quit applying for social services?
That is correct, Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Supervisor Angus?
Thank you. How many years have you been here now, Mike?
I've been here a little, Chairman Gould, Supervisor Angus, I've been here a little over 2 years.
Okay, and in your research, I'm sure you researched this county, has the poverty level ever gone down?
Chairman Gould, Supervisor Angus, the poverty level has fluctuated up and down for the county. What I will say is, as a director of Arizona at Work as well, is that with my department, when you think of our department's mission, it's really to make sure people are gainfully employed and having an ability to look at that whole person and deliver that service. So what I mean by that is anybody that comes into our department is provided resources on job opportunities and ability to do that. If they have an ability to work, we want to make sure we're providing that information, giving them the training, and getting them back to work first.
Okay, and I just want to reiterate that just because we wouldn't apply for this doesn't mean the nonprofits and the faith-based, because I called around and they all know about this. They're all going to apply, so we're basically taking that money away from the nonprofits, which I believe actually do a better job. And just as a personal aside, we want to keep growing the poverty level. Let's keep doing what we're doing. Let's keep having the handouts. Let's keep doing this. And, you know, so I'm going to make a motion that we do not approve the registration of interest for the stability voucher program.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
The ayes appear to have it. Do you have it? So ordered. Let's see. Supervisor Bishop, number 25.
Thank you, Chairman Gold. I just want a little more clarification from Steve Lukowski, our Public Works Director, as to, this is quite a bit of contingency transfer. So I think we should have a little bit of an overview of what we're doing here. Thank you, Steve.
Good morning, Chairman Gould, members of the board, Supervisor Bishop. Thank you for the opportunity and the question. In September 2019, Public Works pursued an accelerated innovation deployment grant through Federal Highway Administration. This is a discretionary grant, one that is based on merit, and we succeeded in obtaining $448,000 in federal funds, requiring a 20% county match, which was about $112,000, for the construction of a new bridge, a bridge that would eliminate the existing low water crossing on the unsurfaced portion of Antares Road where it crosses Truxton Wash. The wash regularly flows and causes very extended closures of Antares Road, and we were able to demonstrate that, the burden of having to attend to the routine cleanups during storm season outweighed the cost of the bridge. Now in 2019, staff, myself, really as lead, collaborated with representatives of Federal Highways, the Arizona Division, and we had proposed what's called a CABS bridge, a composite arch bridge system, as they call it. And what it is it's a superstructure that can be fabricated off-site and then brought on-site and installed with more minimal effort than a traditional bridge. And they've perfected this concept back east for crosses of similar crossings. And both the Arizona Division of Federal Highways as well as us, we're seeing cost estimates for the entire construction right around the amount of funds that we requested. Well, fast forward 2 years later, when we've experienced rapid inflation, as well as just an overall view as Arizona Department of Transportation stepped in, that the actual cost of this bridge could rise to a level of $1.7 million. And when I say that, that does include what ADOT asserts as their administration charges. See, ADOT administers the design and the construction process. That's part of the requirements for any federal funds going to any local government. Well, it does include, for instance, about $250,000 in ADOT charges just for construction administration. Now, whether or not they'll charge that amount, we'll certainly watch that closely if this project moves forward. But we're confident in the project. We see the project as necessary. And when you look at Antares Road, it's really one of the 3 roads that really provide for north-south continuity in travel across greater Mojave County. The other 2 being one US 93 and then Stockton Hill Road. When you factor in access from State Route 66, Antares Road is the 3rd north-south gateway to Greater Dolan and Meadview. So the cost has accelerated due to ADOT's estimates. And again, I do want to emphasize this is only an estimate and a rather very conservative one furnished by the Arizona Department of Transportation. They wish for the county to have the funds on hand before they go out and advertise the project. But of course, if it comes in lower with a lower bid, we will see all of the refunds of the difference.
So is this a transfer of general fund money rather than HERF dollars?
It's HERF dollars. It's 100% HERF dollars.
Okay. And then do you have the current traffic count for Antares Road?
I do not in front of me. I would reason from memory it's about 50 to 100 vehicles per day on average.
Okay, is this the only low water crossing that is problematic? On Antares?
It is the most significant problematic low water crossing.
So if I recall, wasn't Antares shut down for maybe a week
Yes, that's correct. yes.
routinely during the heavier storms?
Largely attributed to trucks and wash flowing, and that's what this project aims to mitigate.
And the majority of traffic that use Antares Road is that people traveling from Peach Springs to Grand Canyon West?
Chairman Gould, Supervisor Bishop, that's a great question. I would peg it as any of the communities from probably Valley Vista on to the north and to the east would be much better served by Antares Road versus the circuitous route to go all the way over to Stockton Hill Road, which basically means driving to Kingman, of course, and cutting over.
Okay, but they would actually be, you would assume, or I assume they're traveling either to Grand Canyon West or to Meadview.
Correct.
Okay. All right, that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Any other questions? It's a pleasure of the board.
Chairman, make a motion to approve.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
The ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. Item 29, I pulled that.
Well, good morning, Chairman Gould, members of the board, County Manager Elters, Mr. Attorney, and of course, our lovely, lovely clerk. Questions? I'll just jump right to it.
Sure. Sheriff, I was taking a look at the backup on this grant, and it's a small grant. It's like $17,000, so it's a Homeland Security grant. It appears to come from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, bounces to the state and bounces to us. But my actual problem was I was looking at the backup and it says that the sub-recipient must comply with the Patriot Act, PL 107-56. I have a problem with the Patriot Act. I believe it's unconstitutional. It allows for secret searches. It allows for holding people with no notification, essentially black bagging operations, warrantless searches. To me, the whole thing is problematic, and it was passed in the fervor following the 9/11 attack. I have a problem. I'm not really willing to submit to you following the Patriot Act for $17,000. And I will make it up to you if I take away your $17,000, but I just don't think that that's something that we want to get involved in.
So Chairman Gould, if I understand you correctly, you frown on those items.
I do frown up on those things.
You know, this has been in the contract for many years. It's something I didn't catch, so I appreciate you bringing it to my attention. We have the action here in front of you. If for some reason the board decides not to vote on this, that's okay. We'll go back and see if we can't, possibly make some changes to it or find another revenue source. The thought behind it is always grant process for us. We work very diligently and seek as much funding outside of our general funding to ensure that we have the equipment necessary. And this particular grant goes for license plate readers. And these are something that's been very beneficial across the state. We'd like to get a couple here locally. So discretion of the board.
Would you rather have us take no action on it, or?
Someone from Flock wanting to talk. He's on video right now. For this.
Oh, what a treat. I guess we have somebody on the video that's willing to speak from the company?
Yes.
From the company. Maybe if you'd like to entertain that, they can answer your question.
Sure.
Hector, you there?
Yes, I am. Good morning.
Good morning.
So your presentation is up too. It's on the screen.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see it. There it is.
Perfect. Would you like me to go over the presentation or?
Craig, if you can answer any of Commissioner Gould's.
I prefer to hold off on the presentation if you just could answer the specific question of Chairman Gould. I don't know if you caught the question or not.
I didn't. I was having some issues. Can you repeat it, please? My apologies.
The question's not really for the vendor. The question is the fact that the federal government is requiring our sheriff's office to comply with the U.S. Patriot Act. I have a problem with the Patriot Act and believe it's unconstitutional, and I'm not interested in having our sheriff's department enforce the Patriot Act for a grant of $17,000. So it's not really an issue with your product. It's a constitutional issue. And I don't believe that you can answer the question. So if the sheriff would rather have you hold off on the presentation for when we can find some funding that's more suitable, that would probably be advisable.
Chairman Gould, I think that's appropriate. We'll hold off on the presentation. I'll go ahead and pull the agenda item. I would like to note, though, that we've done this many, many times in the past, and the contract hasn't changed. So I support what you say and agree with it. Of course, we're not going to.
And I know you do, and it's not a reflection on you. It's just something that I happened to catch.
Sure.
I'm going through the backup.
So you said you would find additional funding somewhere to replace this item?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Chairman Gould,
Supervisor Bishop.
my question is, if we accept this grant, does it have to be used for those nefarious acts that we all are opposed to, or would this go to purchasing the license plate reading equipment?
Chairman Gould, Supervisor Bishop, in reality, of course, we're not going to violate people's rights. If it means giving back $17,000 or turning in some license plates readers, that's what we would do. I think it's a rubber stamp type grant. This is verbiage that's in everyone that we've had. Apparently, I never really took note to it, so I'm glad it came to my attention. But push come to shove, I think everybody on the board knows where your sheriff stands in regards to the Constitution and people's civil rights. So
Great, that was my point. We've never violated anybody's constitutional right to date, and we've accepted many grants in the past that have the same wording. So thank you, Chairman Gould, for calling it to our attention. But like so many of these grants, there's all kinds of information in there, but we don't necessarily comply with everything the federal government wants us to comply with. We use it for our benefit, for our county, for our purposes.
The problem with that is that you're signing an agreement that says that you will submit to the Patriot Act. So you're signing an agreement knowing that you're not going to follow the agreement.
Well, you sign your marriage license too, for better or worse, and that usually doesn't work either for a lot of people.
I'm not even going to go there, but the problem is you would be signing an agreement that would say when the sheriff has to sign the permission slip for FBI agents. Effectively, the sheriff is posse comitatus. He's the highest law enforcement officer in the county. They have to come to ask him for permission to operate inside the county. So theoretically, they could come to the sheriff and say, we're going to black bag Supervisor Gould because we think that he's violated he's a domestic terrorist, and they put a black bag, hood me, and haul me off to who knows where, and don't tell my family where they took me. That's what the Patriot Act is about, and I'm sure the sheriff doesn't want to comply with that, but you sign an agreement that says that you will, it puts you somewhat in a bind. And we're seeing this kind of stuff come down, more and more strings on these grants. And to me, I think it's just egregious. They overtax us. The federal government takes more money than it needs to operate constitutionally. Then they make us beg and bow to get our own money back from the federal government that would be better left here so that we can deal with our own needs.
Chairman Gould, Sheriff Schuster, do you have to comply with the federal government? Aren't you the top law enforcement officer for the state of Arizona?
Supervisor Bishop, for Mojave County, that's correct.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mojave County. I
have no future agenda, so we'll leave it there.
So can the feds come in and tell you how to do your job? That's my question.
Supervisor Bishop, no, they cannot. They can certainly make recommendations, and we'll hear them out, but no.
So that's the way it was when I was in law enforcement. So I wanted to make sure nothing had changed.
Chairman Gould, just to add one piece, the only concern I do have, this is a small grant and we can certainly do without it. We have been using this grant process for many years with some bigger ticket items. So we'll go ahead and pull this one today. I'll review, because I noted while we were discussing there was specifics to the Patriot Act. There was a chapter or verse type of language. So I'd like to read through that before I...
Sure. And the way that I read it, it says the entire law, including, and then it goes on to talk about smallpox for some reason. But the way that I read it, it was the entire Patriot Act is what it was saying.
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Sheriff Schuster, I appreciate your willingness to just go along and to review the terms. Again, a lot of these grants or contracts or whatever it is, a lot of times, you know, how many times do they go through a review of that boilerplate? And maybe it's an opportunity to say, hey, you need to revise or review your boilerplate that's going along with this grant again. Maybe they'll say you're right. So,
yeah. Supervisor Lingenfelten, thank you for that. And I would like to pose a question to our attorney. Was there any language associated with the Patriot Act in the ARPA funding or the CARES funding for my own edification?
I don't know the answer to that. I'll look at it.
It seems like they're throwing it into everything now, and it's going to become problematic.
Sure.
Anyhow, we'll pull that agenda.
Thank you, Sheriff. Thanks for your time. Number 30, Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not to do with you, Sheriff. My problem with this is we're going out to have a contract with another agency to oversee the paying of our deputy sheriffs. The reason we're doing this is because the retirement system doesn't want to credit them with the money. I could care less what the retirement system wants to do or doesn't want to do. The liability, and I don't care how good our attorneys are, they're saying, well, this organization will cover us liability if something happens with the deputies. But they're Mojave County deputy sheriffs, hired by the sheriff, paid by the county, dressed in uniforms, paid for by the county, driving cars paid for by the county. So how are we not liable? I believe that we should say, hey, we're going to pay them whether they like it or not. I just don't think going out to a third-party vendor to pay them money that, you know, they're taking money from somebody. It just doesn't make sense to me. That was all. I'm just always opposed to that.
Sheriff, can you explain what this does?
Certainly, Chairman Gould, supervisors. The sheriff's office, in fact, all law enforcement agents in the state often has off-duty employment for their officers. These are various assignments where the officer will use a public vehicle, will wear his uniform, but they're paid directly by the requestee. It's not through the county. It does not go through payroll. And the reason for that, years ago, the Highway Patrol was getting paid through their payroll, and some of their members got an exorbitant amount of overtime, which upped the entire public safety retirement system. So you had officers that maybe do a $70,000 retirement getting a $160,000 retirement. So they said that's enough. So either way we're doing this right now, it's just a staffing issue. So every time we have a company call us and request off-duty work, we assign it to one of our staff members who begins calling the deputies. Do you want to work it? It's a nightmare. It's just scheduling and trying to figure it out. All this company does, and it costs us nothing, is they send a notification to all our officers. If you want to work this, sign up, and it's done. We have complete control over our officers and what details they work, and moreover, the company pays directly to the officer and then seeks reimbursement from whatever client they have. So it's something that we've been doing for a long time. This just makes it a lot easier on our end.
So do they reimburse us for the use of our equipment?
They do. It's in the fee schedule. So the officer off-duty rates in the fee schedule, I think it's $50 per hour, and then the vehicle use is $10 an hour, which we probably are going to have to look at again in the future with the price of gas.
So that contractor then pays the county for the use of the county's equipment?
Yeah, currently.
Okay.
We get two separate checks. One goes to the officer. The other check comes directly to the county for the vehicle use.
Thank you, sir. Supervisor Lingenfelter, do you have a question?
No, sir.
Okay.
Supervisor Chairman Gould?
Supervisor Johnson.
I guess you were hitting on what always bothers me is the fact that I understand what they're doing, and I understand why they've done it, but it's just tough luck. That's how life works. When somebody else is paying our deputies, they're doing work under the color of authority of Mojave County Sheriff's Department, and I think that we should be paying them and taking their responsibility, because if one of those guys gets injured out there, like any good deputy sheriff, he'll wait till he comes back to work before he files that injury report, you know, and we're stuck with it. Not that anybody would ever do that, but that's just my problem. I've said all I got to say. Thank you.
And doing it for you.
So, Sheriff, if they're injured while they're working for this contractor, are they under the contractor's workers' comp program or the county's workers' comp program?
They're under the contractor. And if by default the contractor says we're not doing it, they would probably fall under the county compensation. But yeah, by default, they're under the contractor. And I think there's actually an extra layer of protection through this company as well.
Supervisor Bishop.
Chairman Gold, just for historical purposes, the Sheriff's Office has been doing this for at least 30 years that I'm aware of. It's kind of a good for morale building. It's an opportunity for staff to make a little added money, and they're underpaid already, as we all can agree with. So it's just kind of a nice thing if you can, as a deputy sheriff, get one of these jobs and use their expertise to bring in a little extra money for their families. So I think we're covered by the policy and the insurance and the contract and everything. So it's been done for years, and maybe Ryan Esplin can explain the contract a little bit better for us.
Thank you, Supervisor. Sheriff, does the time that they work on this go towards their retirement benefits, or did the legislature change that at one time, I believe?
Chairman Gould, that's correct. It no longer goes towards their retirement. And another caveat, a lot of your state highway projects, they're mandated to have local law enforcement on scene, so we've got to put them out there anyhow. And we've done everything from working, road construction to movie security. I mean, there's a lot of off-duty work that we just did some over at the fair, and of course that was on county time, but it's separate from their scheduled time, and it's something we've done for a long time, and we should continue.
And it's voluntary for the officer, they're not mandated to do it?
Chairman Gould, that's correct. In fact, my oldest daughter wouldn't have gone to college had we not had off-duty work at that time. So.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Chairman Gold.
Supervisor Bishop.
I will make the motion to approve.
Second.
You've heard that motion in second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. I believe that brings us to the regular agenda.
Just stay there.
Yeah, or the Sheriff Schuster show as, so we're at item 35. Sheriff Schuster.
Thank you, Chairman Gould and Board. This item is actually a request for discussion and possible action regarding a command post for the Sheriff's Office. And I don't want to take you back a little bit. I'm in my second term now, and as you know, when I was first elected, we came together not only with the board but internally and came up with a plan to try and address the ongoing needs of the agency, and there were many. We focused on staffing and pay. Those were critical because, as you know, you can't get the job done with buildings and cars alone. You need those things. So even though there was a lot of other needs at the time, we didn't want to inundate the board with an unreasonable request, so we decided to break it into a 10-year cycle. And that's why each year at budget season I come to you and ask for specific increases. However, we are in desperate need of a command post. It was more apparent to me this year, and I think the timing is right. We run close to 200 missions a year out in the desert and in rural areas, and some go for very long periods of time, and our staff, they have to man these things. We currently are using tents, we're using tailgates for days on end, and it's unacceptable. We did have a command post, if we can call it that was destroyed in a car accident in 2019. It was a recreational trailer that had outlived its use, but it's all we had. I don't know what came about with the insurance settlement. I doubt there was much to it, to be honest with you. But my request is to open up to the board the opportunity for one or all of you to champion this command post, not to exceed $400,000. It does seem like a high figure, but in reality, when you're looking for law enforcement, commercial grade equipment, it's very much on the low end. We're looking at government sales, GSA, and so I think we can accomplish it at around that number, and again, that is at the low end that would meet our needs. And this is a complete mobile office. This is a dispatch center. This is set up the way it would be designed to last for many, many years in the future.
Questions for Supervisor Bishop?
Sheriff Schuster, at the Mojave County Fair this year, we had a mobile command post center. What was that?
Sheriff's Command, Supervisor Bishop, the Sheriff's Command Center?
Yeah, it was a big unit. It said Mojave County Command Center. I don't know if it was a fifth wheel or a trailer or what it was, but it looked very professional. And it had deputy cars parked around it, and I thought it was nice. I didn't go inside, but it looked good.
Supervisor Bishop, it probably was the old command center. While I say it was totaled, I think we still have it, and we probably hobbled it over there. And it's not about the appearance for me. That is a lackluster, dilapidated structure, and I'm not comfortable using it in the field, quite honestly. So that's why we're looking to replace. But that's the only thing I can think of, honestly.
Okay, yeah, there was air in the tires, and it looked good from the outside, but I did not go inside.
Supervisor Angus.
Since this board had agreed to divide that money by supervisor district, would it be possible for the supervisors who would like to make this happen for the Sheriff's Department, can we each put in, maybe divide it by whoever agrees that it could come out of their district? So if there's like 3 of us, then it would be 400,000 divided by 3. Would that be possible?
Is that a question for me?
Excuse me?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah.
Yes. Chairman Gould, Board of Supervisors, yes. Whatever you wish to do, you guys can do that. If the board has said, this is how we wish to allocate it, we'll allocate between 5 different supervisors. If you wish to modify that and say, let's have 3 people pulled together, then you can do that if you wish. The board giveth, the board taketh. If that's how you wish to do it, you can do that.
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Bishop.
Just as a notable piece of history with the ARPA funds, I tried to do that with the healthcare van that was purchased with my ARPA money, and not any of the other supervisors were interested in buying in, so you may find that a problem with this as well.
Okay. I don't know how we would see who would be open for that. So, I mean, if there were 4, it would be 100,000 each. And I know we all have designated, I don't think any of us have designated all the money. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but how would we even go about that?
What you could do is you could do a motion today, the motion to approve the project and divide it by 4 ways, or divide it by 3, or whatever wish that you guys wish to do, and then the board would vote on it. It would have to be a vote of the board, though.
So my funds are allocated already.
Oh, you're fine, okay. Okay, if in the form of a motion, it would be, just leave it open. I mean, I'm not asking anybody to decide today. It would just be,
So I would, something to the effect of move to approve the proposed project of purchasing a mobile command center funded through ARPA monies, not to exceed $400,000, to be funded by, and then specify which
Right.
3 or 4 wish to do it, and then see if the board votes on it, and then go from there.
Okay, but here's the problem. So let's say I make this motion and no one wants to put in.
Exactly, like with my van.
Am I liable for the whole 400,000 or?
No, it would just be contingent on that. If the vote doesn't pass, then it doesn't pass. It has to.
It's probably something that requires a little deeper thought and discussion than a negotiation from the dais, in my opinion. Supervisor Lingfelter?
Thank you, Chairman Gould. I was going to say I appreciate the ask. Unfortunately, similar to Supervisor Bishop, most of District 1's funding is already allocated. Half of it is going to broadband infrastructure, bringing us up to 10G, symmetrical fiber to the premises in the whole Kingman area, and then a lot of water infrastructure work. So, sorry about that.
Chairman Gould, Supervisor Lingenfelter, I completely understand. We're getting a little thin here on members that still have funding left. Chairman Gould, would you like to sponsor this in its entirety?
I will consider it, and we've had this discussion previously, too.
Buster, somebody say something.
Well, the board voted to divide it into 5 districts. And unfortunately, my district is Lake Havasu district, and I'm assuming, like Supervisor Gould, we're the only 2 that probably really have any money left. We have projects pending before us that have already been brought up, and so it makes it tough on us when we have districts to do.
Chairman Gould, Supervisor Johnson, fair enough. I would ask that you continue to think on this, and if you do find funding that would satisfy this request, it is needed.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
On to item 36, Supervisor Bishop.
Thank you, Chairman Gould. I bring this to the board for consideration. I think the Transportation Commission has been formed for at least 10 years. I think it's time that we revisit the bylaws, look at the activity of this board, and make a determination whether or not this board needs to continue or maybe it needs to be dissolved. I did some research. I discovered that out of our 15 counties in Arizona, there are only 3 other counties that have a transportation commission. That's Maricopa, Pima, and Pinal, the 3 largest counties. And then Santa Cruz, they pull a working group together as needed when they have situations where they need to study transportation issues. And looking at our own transportation board, it appears that we only have 3, possibly 4 members of the board that are have been appointed by this board. District 1 has no representative. District 2 has no representative, nor does District 3. District 5, I'm not sure if Michael Bell is current or not, but my list shows that he expired in 2022. So decisions are being made without even a quorum of the Transportation Commission, and I don't even know if that's legal. So I think we need to look at this. The Transportation Commission at their meeting in September, the only items on their agenda was to talk about broken windshields, which is probably out of their purview. The next agenda item was to encourage the existing commissioners to submit items to put on the agenda because they frequently cancel their meetings. So, and then they wanted to reach out to ADOT and ask ADOT to attend their meetings, and they wanted to attend ADOT meetings. And then the last item on their agenda was to get the commissioners to do a membership drive to find other commissioners. So it doesn't seem like the interest is there any longer, or possibly the need. So I would like staff to take a look at this and maybe change the bylaws if we're going to keep the Transportation Commission, maybe change the meeting dates to quarterly, maybe quit rotating them around the county now that we have, thanks to COVID, knowledge that we can Zoom these meetings. And maybe reduce the number of commissioners from 2 from each district down to maybe just 1 from each district, which would help with recruiting, or we totally just dissolve it and let Steve Lukowski present items to this board directly rather than have the go-between. So those are the things that I'm thinking of, and I would like to make a motion to direct staff to review the rules, the composition, the role, and the bylaws of this Transportation Commission and bring it back at the next meeting.
I'll second that.
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Johnson.
Transportation Commission's been around for over 20 years, or around 20 years. When I first came in, it was only a 3-man board, 3-person board, I guess, nowadays. And the way the county did it was they divided the HERF funds between districts. And the sitting supervisor decided how that money would be spent. I saw what I believe was a lot of misappropriation of monies being going on. So I proposed that we start a Transportation Commission only for the fact that they would meet and our Mr. Lutowski's group would bring in all the roads that he thought should be done, and then they would vote and say, yeah, that's a good idea, those are the roads that we should do, and then it would come to the board and we would have the final say in it, and it took away a lot of that favoritism that was going on by the supervisors, because people were looking at roads by their needs, not by what their personal agendas were. I think it's gotten carried away from that. I see them, when Supervisor Bishop is bringing up, the things that she's bringing up, that was never envisioned for that. It was never an oversight of the Transportation Department of the county. I think it's been a good group. I think it's out usefulness now, and I would ask you just to amend the motion to abolish the Transportation Commission. Especially now that, you look at Supervisor Angus and myself, well, I think I have 3 county roads, so I whooped you on that. It was kind of hard to get anybody from Havasu to want to be on a Transportation Commission when they have absolutely no roads in the county.
So Chairman Johnson, I would entertain amending my motion. I would first like to hear from Steve Lukowski to find out if we do away with the Transportation Commission, how things would progress going forward and how he would then present just to this board rather than have the Transportation Commission as a cushion.
Yes, good morning, Chairman Gould, members of the board, Supervisor Bishop. I can provide a brief synopsis of the business functions of the Transportation Commission since, say, January of 2020. 2 main functions. One, to act as a recommending body on the planning and construction of capital improvement transportation projects. And 2, as per a resolution 2050 back in the year 2000, the board had established that the Transportation Commission review public petitions to establish county highways and make recommendations to the board on that. Public Works has pulled in almost $13 million of federal funding for capital projects. That's actually largely through WACOG and a couple of sporadic direct discretionary grants. So staff has always worked through the years to identify projects and work through WACOG and their transportation funding avenues to establish projects of need for the county, and they have been quite varied, largely public safety or traffic safety projects over the years, rumble strips, but we've done the roundabout in Golden Shores. We did the bridge over Sacramento Wash. Those were projects that staff pulled in through funding. But as I think the board knows, in our routine budget preparations and when we present the budgets year in and year out, our focus is on maintenance and operations. That's our bread and butter. Chip seal, we maintain over 800 miles of roads. You know that. Over 1,300 miles of unsurfaced roads. So the amount of HERF funds that we generally have available for capital improvements, and again, we can always vary that. We're very cash healthy for HERF, but it's about $1 million a year. roughly, outside of those federal projects. With regard to just meetings since January of 2020, and I'll exclude the 2 meetings in March and April of 2020 because of the COVID emergency. I don't think any commissions met then. There were 14 of 32 meetings canceled, or 44% of meetings. The commission's composition included 5 appointed commissioners and at most 6 appointed commissioners of the 10 during that time. And as far as expenses and staff burden time, since January 2020, the commission has expensed about $2,800 of her funds for travel-related expenses, and we estimate about 240 staff hours annually to support the commission. So in summary, you know, staff has had a pretty good track record at identifying capital projects of merit, and in the future, to answer your question, I'm sorry I was a little roundabout in answering your question, Supervisor Bishop, but you know, staff can still perform the engineering studies on a county highway petition and report back direct to the board if that's the board's pleasure. And we can also put together, coincident with our budget, a capital improvement road program, again, directly for the board to consider. But that's the board's pleasure, of course.
Okay, thank you, Steve. I'd also like to point out we do have one Transportation Commissioner here in the audience, Kenny Works. Kenny, would you like to say anything to the board before I amend my motion?
Thank you for the opportunity for my input. There's been a lot of success, and I think the commission was largely responsible for it. We just got 4 miles of Alamo Road paved, and we got about 4 more to go before we get into a reasonable safety area in that area. And we've got a lot of paving. Hard surface road was done in the area around the Super Walmart in Mojave Valley there. They put that median strip in that put a lot of extra work on traffic on the side roads leading to the area, and those were hard surface. The commission had a lot of input into that. And Mountain View Road, making an alternative route up through Bullhead City and such has to be done, and the commission had a lot of input into that. And of course, Mr. Lakowski's input was vital to all that as well, and it was a discussion between all of us and Steve Lakowski and his staff that led to those successes. I'm leaving out the District 1 area there up north. What's the name of that road? Rosie Canyon. And another one is Skipper Boulevard in the White Hills area. We had a lot of input into that. The residents in that area came down here and had a talk with us, and we led to the improvements of Skipper Boulevard up in that area, and a lot of safety improvements as well on that road. And I think that we had a lot of discussions on the intersection of Pierce Ferry Road and 93. There needs to be a lot of safety issues addressed there, and we're having difficulty getting the money we need from the feds, because it is a federal highway there, and it's an interstate highway, and it needs to be addressed by the federal government, and there needs to be a lot of improvements in all those intersections going up 93 towards Vegas. But I think that the commission has done a good job and was able to contribute to the safety in a lot of the highways around here, and addressed a lot of issues that you don't see here at the board members, board issues. But there were a lot of little side issues along the way that were addressed by the commission as well. But I think that probably once every couple months would probably be enough to have enough of meetings for the commissioners to attend.
Kenny, could I ask you a question?
Sure.
What do the commissioners do other than accept recommendations and comments from the Public Works Director and staff, and then takes it back to the commission and you guys discuss it and then you vote on it, and then it comes to our board and we either approve or disapprove it? Is that, is that about the bulk of it?
For instance, Alamo Road needed about 9 miles of hard surface road. The board pared that down to 4, and there's still more to go up there. But otherwise, if I would have had my way on the board, we would have gotten all 9 miles. But that's where the board comes in and addresses their concerns and how much money they think ought to be spent on these things before making any recommendations to the Board of Supervisors.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kenny. I appreciate it. And thank you for your service on the board.
Thank you.
I believe the chairman of the board went on a field trip to go look at that area also. Director Latoski, do their bylaws permit them to change to a quarterly meeting rather than a bi-monthly meeting?
Chairman Gould, members of the board, just as with any bylaws, they could certainly be amended to indicate meeting frequency. Currently, the bylaws specify monthly meetings.
Okay. Currently, it's a monthly meeting.
Currently monthly, and then they do specify as well that the one meeting has to happen in the Greater Lake Havasu area and Greater Bullhead area.
Oh, okay. So they could then change to quarterly meetings then?
That's
There's
correct,
not enough of a workload for them to meet monthly?
That's correct.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you, Chairman Gould. I appreciate the discussion on this item. The only other question I wanted to ask, just to get a full picture, is to our county manager. You used to be an ADOT administrator. Do you have any insights that you'd like to share about this whole process and committee?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Lingenfelter, thank you for the opportunity. I was with the county when the commission was formed and served as a technical advisor at that time as well. The vision at the time was that a transportation master plan identifying county highway corridors, principal arterials, and so on would be identified, presented to the board for approval, that will serve as the backbone for any improvements to be programmed. I think that has been achieved over the years. As far as the functions of today and the funding that is at hand, and the primary goal that we have, which is preserving an existing system that would cost significantly more if it was to deteriorate to the point where it would be reconstructed. The focus has been more on system preservation than upgrade and improvements. So to that end, I think really the options are reasonable to revisit. If the board wishes to abolish, I do understand that, and I think that would not be detrimental. If the board wishes to scale back both the numbers on the board to achieve more participation as far as the attendance and fewer meetings, that would be scheduled at a more strategic time for them to consider projects and provide the board. I think there is value in having an independent group appointed by the board to debate a little bit more than is allowed here at the platform and provide the board some feedback. So I truly, I can see it going either way. I do see some value in having the commission, but at a perhaps a more scaled back. And again, my thoughts are based on serving both this Transportation Commission here in Mojave County when I was here, also serving the State Transportation Board as a state engineer, and then being a member of the State Transportation Board for a number of years. I think the board has options, and whatever you do will ultimately work well for us.
I appreciate you sharing your thoughts. The reason I asked the question is because I personally give weight to your thoughts and your opinion based upon your experience and your career. And I'd love to, if it gets abolished, it gets abolished, but I would like to see what you and your transportation director, public works director would come back with as far as recommendations. I think it sounds like the process right now is not working as well as it should, but I still think at the same time that some sort of a public participation component is in the best interest of the county. I don't know how that all plays out, but I appreciate you sharing your thoughts. If nothing else, thank you.
Chairman Gold.
Supervisor Bishop.
I would like to amend my motion and abolish the Transportation Commission as it stands.
Second.
You've heard that motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Nay. It appears that the ayes have it. Do have it. So ordered. On to item 37. Oh, with music and everything. Ryan, you want to go over, give a brief overview of what I've got planned in item 37?
Sure, Chairman. So the item here is to approve the ARPA funds for District 5 allocations in the amount of $75,000 to the Yucca Community Food Pantry. The Yucca Community Food Pantry has submitted a letter that's in your backup, and they detail the different requests that they're making for the allocation of monies. It's kind of broken down in maybe 2 or 3 parts. One is to finish the rehab of their pantry, finish up their building, the actual building itself. They were working on it, and then the pandemic hit, and really they exhausted all their resources as much as they could, to the point where they just have a little bit more funding needed to finish up the building. So you have that part, and that's really, I think, I'd have to look at the backup, but I thought it was only around $4,000 or $5,000. But the rest of it is related to refrigeration, so units for refrigeration to ensure that they can refrigerate the food that is in their pantry, and then also a vehicle that they would use they would have a refrigeration unit in the vehicle so they could transport food from various different donors to the food bank. I've reviewed the ARPA rules, and this fits squarely within the ARPA rules. ARPA was designed to help address the effects of the pandemic, the public health effects, as well as the negative economic impact that the pandemic had. And this is helping people who are in need of food and services. Obviously, one of the effects was the people became unemployed and tried to supplement their income by finding other ways to help provide for their needs through food banks and things. And so this food bank, like many other food banks, was hit particularly hard the last couple of years. This will help them and support them. I've looked through both the interim rules and the final rules, and it approves. I think that it approves. What we would do is, if the board is inclined, the board would approve this votes, and then we would follow the same model that we have with the other recipients by reaching out to them and working through a ARPA agreement, a funding agreement. And then once the funding agreement is settled between the parties, we'll bring it back for a final approval for the board, just like the other ones.
Thank you, Ryan. Questions from the board for Ryan?
Chairman Gould.
And it looks like it's 78,000. I'm sorry, I said 75.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
I've got somebody from the public.
Oh, I'm sorry. Pardon.
Before we do that. Chris Rodarty.
Chris Rodarty, Mojave County taxpayer. First of all, thank you, Supervisor Angus, Supervisor Lingenfelter, and Chairman Gould for your votes in opposition to item 10 today. We're making progress. However, I oppose item 37, which calls for yet more American Rescue Plan spending. On September 19th, Chairman Gould proclaimed that following his exhaustive study, there was nothing in the ARPA Act that he, as a conservative, would find objectionable. Respectfully, I encourage you to read the May 2022 White House volume titled Advancing Equity Through the American Rescue Plan. The introduction of this 301-page document reads, the Biden-Harris administration...
Ma'am, can I stop you for a moment?
Yes.
You misquoted me. I said I read the ARPA rules and found nothing that, as a conservative, that I could object to. You can proceed.
So did you read the White House?
Is that in the rule? Is that in the rules? It's not in the rules. It's an extra document.
That's true. It's
Correct.
in the extra document, and he's saying what this is going to do, what he wants this ARPA to do.
Well, you quoted me
Advance
saying
equity.
that I found nothing in the act that I objected to as a conservative. See, we get to have a back and forth now.
So you said the rules.
I said in the rules.
I'm going to
That is not in the rules. But you can talk about it if you want to.
Well, are you satisfied that there's no equity provisions in this ARPA Act, that Biden is not trying to advance equity?
Oh, I'm sure that he is.
So would you find that objectionable?
Yes, but that's not in the rules. And I'm correcting your misquote.
Well, I apologize for that. I will have to revisit that.
Thank you.
But at any rate, the document goes on to say, on March 11th, 2021, he signed into law, Biden did, the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. And the plan included historic funding for over 200 programs and services designed to counteract the public health, economic, and broader societal harms of the COVID-19 pandemic, and became the administration's first opportunity to advance equity through the implementation of major legislation. That is the goal of this. Now, I don't recall reading anything related to equity in our precious U.S. or Arizona state constitutions. Of course, as we all know, these constitutional principles as written, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, fall secondary to those as interpreted by the men in black robes. I'm being sarcastic here. So as I've mentioned countless times, Mojave County's initial mistake, or should I say fatal error, was in grabbing the $42 million Biden bait in the first place. And now, as the money is being doled out with every penny spent, I cringe at how our founders would respond to our flagrant abuse and dismissal of the blood and treasure they expended to establish this one great nation, particularly by those who purport themselves as patriots. Thank you.
Ma'am, I also said that I wish that they never passed the American Recovery Act because I think it's bad policy. But here I sit with something that I have to deal with that I wish never fell on my shoulders. I attempted to give my money back to my constituents. I was unable to get most of them to participate. Many of them said, give my share to the food bank. So that's what I'm here doing today. Thank you. Did we have a motion?
Chairman Gould, I would make a motion to approve item 37.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Ayes appear to have it, do have it, so ordered. Item 38. County Manager.
Mr. Chairman, board members, thank you. This is pertaining to a lease that has been with us for quite a bit of time, about 2 decades. It started in the year 2000, and the original terms of the lease expired in October of last year. Staff has been engaged with the vendor to negotiate a new lease, and so this is really a 3-component. One is to negotiate a new lease and collect on the rent and funds owed up to the time it expired. Second was the period while the new lease was being negotiated, and the rent or funds owed during that period, which took almost a year. And the third is the new terms for the lease going forward. We've kept the board in the loop throughout. We wanted to wait on bringing this particular item to the board until we receive the funds that were due. We have received a copy of the check that is in the mail that to assure us that it is coming before we brought this to you. There's an element of urgency for the timeline to ensure that we don't have another expiration, and we wanted to put it on the agenda to have the board approval before we proceed any further. So I'm happy to answer any more questions, and with your permission, perhaps items 38 and 39 could be taken together, because 39 is really just related to 38, and it's affirming the terms of the lease according to a request that the vendor asked for, and I'm sure Attorney Asplin can explain item 39, because it's really more of a legal step than I can.
We probably can discuss both items simultaneously, but we'll still require separate motions and votes on that.
Thank you. Yeah. And if I could just jump into what County Manager Alters has stated.
Please do.
Just a little bit of background. The property is a location up in Dolan Springs, and originally it was Mojave County that acquired it by eminent domain. And the purpose that they acquired it was for the TV district. It was for the TV district to be able to have a tower and then be able to utilize it and so forth. And so that's what it was originally done. And so the county still owns the land. They own the dirt. It's still in the county's name. No one had really looked at that or questioned that for many years, even though the agreement for these last 2 decades has been between the provider and with the TV district. That was always the arrangement, and they've been doing it for all this time. As County Manager Elters stated, the agreement ended, and so now we've entered into a new agreement and this agreement is between the TV district and Verizon or Cellco, I believe it's Cellco partnership. So it's between them, and essentially they will operate the tower, but they also then allow space on the tower for the TV district. The TV district will continue to use it to broadcast, and that's how it's always been. It'll be the exact same arrangements. The only difference here, the change here, is that we prepared a tournament agreement. I think, make sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. A recognition and a tournament agreement that basically says, okay, Mojave County recognizes the agreement between the Verizon and the TV district, that they have a lease agreement, and that we will consent, Mojave County will consent to it and allow it to take place. That's pretty common where you have a landlord, tenant, and then a sublease. That's essentially what this is. It's a landlord, tenant, and then a sublease. So that's what that's for.
So they're going to lease space on the tower?
Correct. They're going to lease space on the tower, but then we also get the TV district still gets to utilize space on the tower as well.
Thank you. Questions for Ryan? Supervisor Bishop?
No questions, but I will make a motion to authorize you as the chairman to execute the attorney agreement.
It's an attorney agreement, and we would say, recommend to authorize both a motion to approve 38 and then a motion to approve 39 is what I would.
I'll amend my motion to state, motion to approve item number 38 and 39 as proposed. Okay.
You've heard, yep. For a second.
You've question,
that,
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Johnson.
38 is 5 years with 3 5-year leases. 39 is 20 years. Is there a reason they're two different?
We did it so that there would not be any overlap. Let me just double check. So the initial term will be for 5 years, and then 3 additional 5-year terms, so that would be 20 years, right? If my math is right. So 20 years. And the second one would be is it 20? I'm just checking. The second one where the landlord is consenting to enter into it. And so I don't see anything that stops, I don't see anything that says that it's for any length. I mean, essentially that attornment is saying, hey, we agree to the first one. So I don't see any limitations on the second one. And that's how it would work. I mean, that attornment is consenting to the first one, saying, "Hey, we agreed to and recognize that first lease." So there's no time frame on that. Are you referring to the lease agreement that we did at the last meeting? Is that the one you're referring to? That could be what you're doing. So I'm sorry. This is all kind of the work that I've been doing at the previous board meeting. The board approved a lease agreement between Mojave County and the TV district so that the TV district can lease that land that's owned by the county. And as part of that agreement, we said that the TV district could sublease it to other people. That's essentially what they're doing right here. They're subleasing it to Verizon is what they're doing. The board has already approved that at the last meeting to allow that to happen. Because Verizon wants to have an assurance that the TV district has the authority to enter into these agreements because the county owns the land. And so we want to say, yep, we own it, but we recognize this agreement and we recognize that it is legal.
The TV district is a separate entity from the county.
Correct. And that's why we did that.
Even though the board members, the board of supervisors are the board for the TV district.
Correct. Correct. And that was what I was trying to clean up between the last meeting and this meeting. That's what I'm trying to clean up, to recognize that there are two separate entities, but that both entities approve of the lease agreement. So that's the purpose of these two.
Okay. Supervisor Johnson, you're looking.
Am I what? Oh, it just said in here that it was 20 years. I can find it if you want. I don't know if it made a difference or not. It just seemed strange to me that we did one for 3 renewals and one for 20 years, but I'm not going to die over it.
I think if it goes 5 for initial and then 3 5-year renewals, then that combined would be 20, and then the other one would be 20, so it'd be consistent. I tried to do that. I tried to make some kind of consistency.
Does it call out a 20-year lease in the second agreement rather than 4 5s?
I believe so.
It could be, or
it seems that might be a conflict, though.
As long as they're, the point though is, as long as Mojave County and the TV district has the longer lease, then you're okay, and which is what we have. As long as that's the whole point of that. That's got to be longer, and then the TV district can then sublease it to anybody it wishes to do. In this case, they wish to do it with Verizon.
So is the lease between the county and the TV district the 20-year lease?
I think so, and that was at the last board meeting. I'd have to pull that up.
Okay.
That was at the last board meeting. Either the last one or the one before it. Was it September 19th? Okay, September 19th.
I did it.
It's not a big thing to me, Mr. Chairman. My computer takes a long time to load up, and when I go to the next page, and it stops, so.
Yeah. Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Chairman Gould, thank you. Just one additional question. You had mentioned that we had a copy of a check. Have they been timely on their payments?
Chairman Gould, Supervisor Lingenfelter, I honestly do not have the history in hand to say they have or have not. Generally speaking, I believe they have been. I think the COVID period and the time that we went through was perhaps irregular, and then the lease expired. So we have been in negotiation with them. The fee and the rent has been increased to reflect the current rates and such. I am not aware of a payment problem. I just wanted you to know what I know, which was we said we will bring this item to you, the board, when we receive the payment. I think it took a little bit longer than we anticipated. We continued to hold off. They said, we would really like to have you go to the board with it. We said, as we told you, we would do so when we receive the payment. They made a point of sending us an email with a copy of the check that is in the mail to us, and we felt confident enough that we're getting paid, so we brought the item to you. I didn't mean to imply that we did so because it has been a problem to collect from them. I just wanted you to be aware of the facts as I know them.
Sure, and I just wanted the public to be aware that if we're having a company using property that belongs to Mojave County, that they're compensating the county for that use. Thanks.
So do we check the P.O. box today and see if we got the check?
Did we get it? Not yet? Okay. We're hoping.
That we have the check.
We've seen a copy of it.
Oh, we're still at the copy, okay. I never thought of the copy thing. I'll have to keep that one in my memory bank. You ready to move forward?
Mr. Chairman, I would say in the interest of time, as you heard from Attorney Asplin, the lease between Mojave County, the owner of the land, and the TV district is a 20-year lease.
The 25-year lease.
Oh, 25.
It's a 25, yeah.
So it's even longer. And the TV district authorized by the county to lease, to sublease, they have subleased it to this company for the original 5-year with an option to renew for 5 more years, which would make it 20, which would still be less than the 25 years that Mojave County authorized them. So I think we're in good shape to proceed.
Do we have a motion?
We do have a motion and a second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. Item 40, I believe that's a county manager item too.
It is indeed, Mr. Chairman. It's the last one, so I'll be brief. When the county resumed operation of the fairground at the beginning of this year, staff proposed and the board approved a fee schedule for the use of the fairground facilities. And while the fees were designed to be fair and reasonable, to make this really a community attraction, it did not account for all county-sponsored functions that would take place, such as this one. What we have in this case is we have 2 county departments, 2 county functions that the board and I expect to operate in a self-sustaining way financially. Both the fairground, we've said we would like you to build on successes and put yourself in position to be fairly independent from the general fund and to the extent possible and be self-sustaining. Animal shelter is in the same position. In this case, the animal shelter is planning to have a fundraising event. It is at the fairground. If the fees that the board approved applies, based on what the department and staff know, the fees would really chew up most of the fundraising revenues that would be coming in. The two have worked together, the fairground staff and the animal shelter, and brought it to my attention, and after discussing it with them and looking at what the fees were intended to do, what is in front of you is truly a compromise. We think it will cover the cost of the fairground to accommodate this fundraising for the animal shelter, and wanted to put it in front of you for consideration. I think it's a reasonable compromise. This has, I think, alerted us or made us aware of these situations that we think will happen more often. We will probably come back in front of the board at some point in the future and maybe ask for establishing fees that would cover these situations, so we're not bringing it in front of you every time. But this is scheduled for later this month. We really didn't have time to do that first, so we wanted to bring this one to you first. And I thank you. Be happy to answer any question you may have.
Questions for the county manager?
Just a comment, if I might.
Supervisor Bishop.
It just seems like this is, taking over the fairgrounds is a work in progress, and we'll be making changes as we learn more about the operation and policies.
Supervisor Johnson.
My question is, when did the county start doing fundraisers? Do we have other departments that do fundraisers? I'm not sure who oversees that money if Mr. Latowski decides he's going to have a fun fair to raise money for his people, or is it the animal control people are doing it, or is it their nonprofit association?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Johnson, thank you for keeping me honest. I did misspeak. It's not a county fundraiser. It's a fundraiser that is taking place on behalf of the animal shelter, which is a county department, as you know, but it is by a 501c3, I believe, and both Barbara and Nicole are here to get a little bit more into the details if you would like to.
No, I don't need details. I just saw it was on the agenda that way too, that it didn't say the 501c3. I think we're going to get into a problem if, I have no problem if the library district wants to go use the fairgrounds, or the fairgrounds wants to go to use the library, or county buildings should support other county buildings, but when we have nonprofits, even though they're affiliated in helping with, because you also have a nonprofit, I think, that raises money for the sheriff's dog program too. If you start cutting the fees, it's not fair to the other nonprofit. Once you do one, you've opened the door. That's just my opinion.
Chairman Gould?
Supervisor Angus.
I totally agree with Supervisor Johnson. That was my question too. So this only extends if it's helping the county, not other nonprofits. I don't think that's very fair either.
Chairman Gould, Supervisor Angus, we would like to come up with a policy and bring to you for consideration going forward that would cover the 501c3s and how they, how they come into play on the various fundraisers. In this case, like I said, the event is at the end of the month. There was really no time to develop a policy, so we looked at what's fair. The fair incurs certain costs by having staff and utilities and so on. So what is in front of you, we believe, is to cover the cost of the fairground and allow the animal shelter to benefit from this fundraiser that is being done on their behalf. And we will come back to you with a more complete and comprehensive policy to consider similar situations going forward.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you, Chairman Gould. I would agree that there needs to be something that covers all nonprofits. Would you bring that back in 30 days, or what would be the time frame for that?
Excuse me, Chairman Gould, Supervisor Lingenfelter, in order to change fees or create fees, we would have to have a public hearing, and it needs a 60-day notification for publication.
To change the fees, or for them to bring back something that says, here's what we propose to publish?
They can bring back something to propose, but we can't approve changing them until there's a 60-day published public hearing.
Thank you. And what my question was is, would you be able to bring back something that you would propose within 30 days' time?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Lingenfelter, yes, we can commit to bringing something back to the board by the second board meeting in November, just for you to consider. And if the board decides to consider it and implement it, then we would follow what the clerk of the board is saying as far as a public hearing and adoption and so on.
I appreciate that. It's better to do things that are time framed. This board does so many things that sometimes things fall by the wayside, and so I just want to make sure it gets done. So.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
I'd make a motion to approve with the caveat that the county manager brings back a policy that covers all nonprofits within 30 days.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Supervisor Johnson?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we're setting a bad precedent if we do this. Obviously, what they're saying is they set up a function. They didn't care about the timeline. Now it's a problem. Now they're coming to the board for a special, special agenda item to lower theirs without having any prior discussion of that brought up. We had public hearings when we set the fees to begin with. While I don't want to see these people miss their fundraiser, I don't know how I was the only location. I think we're making a mistake if we do it because we set the precedent. That's all, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Chairman Gould?
Supervisor Bishop.
I've received a lot of feedback from potential vendors that didn't attend the fair because the fees were too high. So I think at this point, if we're going to lower the fees for county-sponsored events, it almost ensures that the public will think the fees are too high to begin with for everybody. So why are they lower for county-sponsored events? Maybe they should be the same across the board. Either lower all the fees or leave all the fees the way they are, is my thinking.
Thank you, Supervisor. Any further questions, comments?
Supervisor Gould, Chairman Gould.
Angus.
I'll retract my second if Supervisor Lingenfelter is something that you still want to go forward.
Well, I would agree with my colleagues on this board that it sounds like there, just in general, there needs to be some more work done on the fee schedule, whether or not they include some sort of a distinction between for-profit events and nonprofit events. I mean, that's not up to to us to recommend. That's up to county manager and his staff to recommend. So we don't want to send out a message that only a nonprofit that's having an event that's going to, benefit a county function are the only ones that get to have reduced fees. I mean, I don't agree with that either. I'm not sure which way to go. When is the event?
October.
This weekend.
Mr. Chairman, and board members, the event is October 21st and October 22nd, which would make it this coming event, this coming weekend.
Well, it kind of puts this board in a bind. It would have been nice to at least have maybe 60 days. Well, it doesn't really matter to say that. I'll retract my motion. I just don't think that it's fair. I mean, everybody cares about the animal shelter and it doing well, but you have to really, realize that the underlying message, which has been said in many different ways today, is we just have to be cognizant of that.
What's the pleasure of the board? Supervisor Johnson.
I don't think you have a motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Chairman Gould, do we need a motion to bring back a policy, a fee policy?
If I can jump into that, you don't need a motion, but we can, the staff can come back, but if you want to pass a motion, you can. It's up to you.
I don't really care. What's the best thing to do?
Do you want the staff to come back with a
Yes.
policy? Motion to direct staff to come back with a policy within 30 days of lowering the fees for the nonprofits, subject to publishing and publishing requirements as required by law at a later date.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Johnson.
I don't know if you'd rather have Supervisor Angus, rather have a discussion among the board members if that's something they want to do before staff goes to all that work, because, maybe for future agenda item by one of the board members, if they so decide to say, hey, let's review the fees, and then before we send it on or don't send it on, maybe.
I don't know that there's a majority of board members that want to revisit the fees at this time.
So no action?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that concludes our agenda. Anything else for the good of the order? We're adjourned.